So now we're recording all of that stuff. People are joining. Hi, how you doing? I probably should have asked for music first, but um, here, let's. I have stuff loaded on the soundboard specifically for that, so we'll go with that. So, it's the advantage of having all the cool toys.
Mm-hmm.
I have part of the Vivaldi suite loaded in my soundboard, so I can, hit it and if I need something at the very last minute. Hi everyone, we'll get started in a few minutes. We just want to give everybody a chance to join. Yeah, the other production note is just turn on when Ken, when you're presenting, Jeff, you can turn off your camera. But when we get to the Q&A, then turn the camera back on.
Will do.
Yeah, exactly. So.
You want me to do the same as well, or?
Well, when you're you're presenting, right? So.
Oh, right. Yeah, I'm sharing. That's fine.
You're sharing. Yes. Yeah, you need to be. Yeah, you're the presenter, so you're on camera. It's when him and
there is. Yeah. We'll see how it goes. There is a little back and forth, like.
Yeah, when there's back and forth, turn on your camera. It's basically.
Yep.
Right. So, and when it's appropriate, but yeah. So in any of the Q&A points we talked about, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Damien, is it typically 15 minutes ish for the Q&A, or?
Yeah, we see where it goes. Sometimes, we leave. Depends on how active the crowd is, right? As to how much Q&A there'll be. So,
okay.
We usually do keep it to the whole session to like an hour. That's when we do that's when we do tech talks anyway. So we do try to hold it to not let it go forever kind of thing, right? So.
Okay, yeah. I just want to measure essentially the demo time, because
exactly.
the demo can be 20 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, yeah, you want to save 15 minutes, but but again, the question, so that's we target like 40-45 minute kind of for content.
Should I go ahead and start the session by sharing my presentation?
You can share it out. So after I introduce you, you can share it. That's fine.
Okay.
Okay. So the music actually ended at about the right time. How about that? It's kind of amazing how that works. Give it another few seconds here. Yes, I'm aware it's time sensitive because it's on my calendar. All right. I think we'll get started here. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's Phone Boy with another in our Checkmates Live series of virtual events. And with us today we have Jeff Kopko, who's one of our cloud security architects, and our main speaker today is Ken Guo from Alkyra, and we're going to talk about how you leverage Check Point and Alkira to secure your multi-cloud environments. Just a couple of quick notes during the session here. If you got questions, we certainly encourage you to have questions. Please type them in the Q&A. We have folks around to answer those questions for you, and And yeah, and of course we're recording this. We'll post it on Checkmates later today, and and hopefully it should appear in the Cloudmates community. We'll make sure all of that's available to you. So with that, I will turn it over to Ken.
Yeah, thanks everybody. So my name is Ken Guo. I'm a technical marketing engineer with Alkyra. Oops. Sorry about that. I'm a technical marketing engineer with Alkyra. So I've been in the networking and cloud space for about 15 years, working mostly on the vendor side. And yeah, so really excited here to share the joint solution today. And I would be really interested to hear all your feedback right after this presentation demo. So here's the agenda for the day. And Jeff, sorry, but go ahead and introduce yourself.
That's all right. Yep. So this is Jeff Kopko. I'm a Cloud Alliance architect here at Check Point, primarily responsible for anything we're doing technical-wise, integration between cloud vendors and integration partners. And Ken and I have been working together on this for a couple of months. So we're pretty excited about this partnership. So with that, I'll do a quick introduction to Check Point, and then you'll hear, as you guys all know, who we are. I'll try to breeze through this. Then you'll hear from Ken about Alkyra and what they're doing, and then how we're providing really a great security story together with simplicity for cloud connectivity. So Check Point, as you're all aware, global leader in cybersecurity, 28 years of cutting edge technologies. We've been traded on NASDAQ since 1996. Nothing new there. Next slide. During the years, we've got many recognition on our products. To name a few, we've been 20 times leader on the Gartner Magic Quadrant for network security. And we are going to focus on network security today, Cloudguard network security. That's really the bread and butter of what Alkyra is doing with their solution. We also have endpoint and mobile solutions. And Forrester has named us a leader for endpoint security. Really what we're going to talk about today, next slide, is the foundation for a layered security posture or a security platform in cloud environments. So we're going to focus on the bottom there, cloud network security. However, for most organizations, they're going to involve posture management, workload protection, AppSec, and intelligence threat hunting as well. So be sure to check out our other products as well, beyond the foundation, which is network security. So next slide. Actually, let's just put all those up there, cycle through these. So generally speaking, Check Point has solutions for, I think there's one more there, Ken. Check Point has solutions for any of the different cloud providers, on-prem or private cloud, to provide network security with automated blueprints, with agility and elasticity, so dynamic scaling. We're also integrated into native security controls on many of the clouds, and we are covering all different use cases on our cloud providers. Now, what we're going to hear from Alkyra, and I'll let Ken take over here in a minute, Alkyra provides all of these same advantages in multi-cloud environments, as well as providing an easier on-ramp for onboarding your cloud connectivity. So we're really excited about that partnership. So we'll hear from Ken a little bit about Alkyra, and then we'll talk about the advantages of the joint solution.
Thanks, Jeff. So I'll start off by telling you a little bit about Alkyra. So the company was founded in 2018 by co-founders who were also co-founders of Viptela, which was a networking company in that pioneered the SD-WAN space. So with Alkyra, what they wanted to do was they wanted to bridge the gaps that they saw in network connectivity and security when enterprises started consuming public clouds and moving their workloads to the cloud. So the company is backed by some of the tier 1 VCs, and our first product, Network Cloud, was actually launched in April of 2020. And then since then, we have partnered with some of the biggest cloud and security providers like AWS and Check Point. So why Alkyra Network Cloud? And why would you even consider Alkyra, right, for your for connectivity and security for your multi-cloud network? So as we can see, since over the last decade, really, due to business application needs, instead of building data centers, enterprises have moved their application infrastructure to the cloud to be more agile, more scalable, and innovate and grow quickly. And I think there's a very famous article, I believe, in 2011, where Andreessen and Horowitz were quoted as saying, right, software is eating the world. And we're literally witnessing that today over the last, not just today, but over the last few years. So similarly for applications, instead of applications that enterprise consume, sitting on-prem, they have also moved from on-prem applications to a SaaS model such as Office 365, Zoom, as we are on today, and Slack and Salesforce, just to name a few. So if we look at network and connectivity in the modern era, the network perimeter is no longer just bounded to the on-premise networks, and IT teams now have to learn networking and security in the cloud, which is fairly unique for each of the cloud service providers and carry their own set of limitations. And on top of that, right, you also have to think about building an architecture to connect existing branches and data centers, remote users, as I am working from home right now at this moment, and also doing so securely and efficiently. And that is really a lot to ask. So what Alkyra aims to do with our solution is to provide a platform that simplifies multi-cloud networking, solve these challenges we just talked about, both in terms of technology and agility, and also offer it as a service. So how we do that is by offering a platform we call Cloud Service Exchange. And so what it is it's really composed of two main components: the Alkyra CSX portal on the upper right there, and then the Alkyra CXPs, or Cloud Exchange Points. So the Alkyra CXX portal is the management plane for the solution, and it's a portal where customers and partners with access for configurations, monitoring, day-to operations, and etc. The Alkyra CXPs, which is they're essentially they're globally distributed full mesh POPs that Alkyra deploys and manages as a service, so they can be provisioned on demand and scales with the customer as your network grows. They provide data plane services to connect sites, remote users, SD-WAN edges, and then obviously the cloud networks such as AWS VPCs, Azure VNet, GCP VPCs, and also Oracle OCI VCNs, right? So within this full mesh of CXPs, so you can think of them almost like a global cloud backbone, if you will. So we offer third-party services from our marketplace, and this is where you can deploy the Check Point Cloudguard firewalls within the CXP. And that's really the joint solution, right? We'll talk about and also I'll demo a bit today. Okay, so just very briefly, I just want to take a look at how Alkyra simplifies network security for a multi-cloud architecture, and look at a high level what our solution, what components our solution abstracts, and then how we can connect your remote sites and cloud networks. So to start, first you have to obviously get connectivity or get access to the Alkyra portal, and then you would basically bring up the CXPs in the regions that you need, right? So the CSPs, again, are globally distributed full mesh POPs, right, that we manage and deploy around the globe. And then you would configure what we call segments, and segments are basically a logical segregation of routing domains and the data plane. And so if you come from a traditional enterprise networking background, then they're basically VRFs. So what the segments allow us to do is we will help you extend VRFs from your on-premise networks all the way to the cloud. So next, you would connect your data centers or other important on-prem sites and also your cloud networks to the CXPs. So in this case, it could be numbers, hundreds of VPCs, let's say, within AWS. And you would assign them to a segment. In this case, we've named the segment line of business 1. So just imagine if you have different lines of businesses, they could sit on different VRFs or different segments. and be completely segregated from each other. And then there's also a group tag. In this case, it's called group prod. There is basically a logical tag we assign to what we call connectors. So the data center will be an on-premise connector in this case, and then the VPCs here would be what we call cloud connectors. So then you assign a tag onto them, and then the group tag, the use of them is really for policy management and using our policy framework to build essentially a global security posture. So then you would have you would put in firewalls in each of the CXP regions. And so the firewall insertion integration with Cloudguard is really what we're focused on today. And then after that, you can connect to regional internet exits if you want that, and then connect your branches and remote users, SD-WAN edges, etc. And then at last, right, as you're migrating to a multi-cloud model and you're bringing in additional cloud service providers, you would then connect those additional clouds to our CXP as well. And you can actually leverage the same set of firewalls in the CXPs for any of these endpoints. So as you're adding these additional VNets or GCP VPCs, as you grow, you can actually leverage the same set of firewalls, but obviously, right, those policies on the firewalls would have to grow as well. So next, let's talk a little bit about how the Check Point and Alkira joint solution works. So after these cluster of firewalls, right, cluster of Cloudguard firewalls are brought up in each regional CXP, they're now available as firewall instances in an off-path design. And then you can leverage the Alkyra policy framework to forward the desired traffic to the groups of Cloudguard firewalls. So you can configure the policies, which can match traffic based on higher level constructs like connectors, right, the actual sites themselves, or groups like we just discussed in the last slide, basically a tag that you can assign to multiple resources to build the policies. So then you match traffic based on these constructs, or you can match traffic based on ACL like attributes, like 6 tuple values. So by the way, this is not a typo. So well, most of you, especially from a security background, would be very familiar with 5 tuple. So we say 6 tuple because we're also able to match on DSCP values. So from there, once you match the traffic flow, either based on connectors, tags, or these 6 tuple values, then you can decide whether to permit the traffic, right? Whether to deny the traffic, or you can then do a service insertion for that traffic. Okay, so we basically provide a simple way to build a uniform security architecture for the cloud. You can leverage Alkyra's policy framework as a layer 3 firewall, if you will, like a network firewall for globally for all of your connected connectors. And then you can for any other traffic flow that you need to be further inspected. For example, maybe traffic to and from database servers, which are really important, and there are some compliance requirements for them. You can then forward that traffic through the Check Point Cloudguard firewalls for inspection, logging, visibility. So I'm going to pause here to see if there are any questions. So if you do, you can go ahead and put in a Q&A.
Yeah, hey, Ken. So I had a question here. Can you talk a little bit about the differences between the Alkyra network policy or network intent and how that differs from the Check Point security policy that we're enforcing here within Alkyra?
Right. So in this case, they're actually separate. They work together, but then they're independently configured. So the policy framework that Alkyra offers, they're used for, sort of matching. I think of them as layer 3 firewall capabilities for a global global connectivity. So like I mentioned, once you have these connectors put in these groups, right, then you no longer have to worry about allowing specific IPs or subnets to your resources. You can build policies allowing groups to group connectively, or you can, basically say, okay, for specific traffic flows, you can also be very granular and match specific subnets or IP addresses, and then insert them through the Cloudguards. On the Cloudguard side, where your access control policies, your threat preventions, all of that additional capability, those are basically independent, and they sit on the firewalls. So even for things that we forward to the checkpoint Cloudguards, even if they are permitted within our layer 3 firewall rules, right, they can still be denied by the Cloudguards.
Gotcha. So I think one way to think about that, as I understand it, is Alkyra is providing a connectivity model and a connectivity policy, right, whereas Checkpoint is providing a full deep packet inspection, threat prevention capability on top of a connectivity model.
Yeah, I think you've summarized it better than I could.
Yeah.
I have a related question because I'm trying to get my mind around this. So this what you guys are providing sounds kind of like what VMware is doing with NSX in terms of traffic steering. And so you can say in doing some basic sanity checks as to who can talk to what, right? Is that a fair description of it, or is there something more that I'm missing?
Yeah, I think the VMware NSX, if I'm not wrong, is more of a they do it more at a site level or a data center, more of a per site. Our policies are more of a logical policies that you can apply sort of enterprise wide, and you'll see that in a demo in a little bit as I'm showing an example of that.
I mean, conceptually speaking, though, that you've got these different sets of resources that need to talk to each other, and you're making sure that only the things that that you're steering the traffic where it needs to go, so it gets there and goes through the appropriate security controls and so on. I understand there's some differences because you're talking about things in multiple sites and multiple clouds, but the idea being that you're providing some sort of central control over how that traffic flows and what things they flow through.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're absolutely right in terms of using it almost like a micro and macro segmentation. It's very much that way. Okay. With our policy framework. Yeah, that was okay.
I just want to make sure I understood it, and I think that just for everybody else's sake, if they, because that's important to articulate. Okay, this is the value that Alkyra is providing here, and this is the value that Checkpoint's providing. So it definitely makes sense that these solutions work well together. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think we'll touch on it in a minute here, but the real value, I'm skipping a slide. I'm skipping ahead, but that's all right. Just stay on this slide for a second. The real value of this partnership is that Alkyra is providing the easy button for cloud connectivity and cloud on-ramp connectivity from ground to cloud, from ground to internet, or cloud to cloud as needed. So Alkyra is providing the highway. We're providing next generation security protection on that highway.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that makes nothing but sense. I just want to make sure it's that I understood it at least.
Sure. So actually, I've got another question here, and if you've got one after that, Damien. So Ken, how are we dealing with HA concerns or auto scaling concerns, dynamic traffic capacity concerns in Alkyra, and then how Alkyra works with Checkpoint on that matter?
Yeah, so we don't use the auto scaling groups or concepts like that. So when you provision the firewalls, you would define a minimum and maximum number of firewalls you want to deploy or provision per region. And so we're constantly monitoring the health of the firewalls and also their utilization. And so once, let's say you bring up one firewall and you have a maximum value for that CXP region being 5 firewalls, then what happens is once the utilization of that firewall exceeds a certain threshold, then we'll automatically start provisioning another firewall. And so it's very similar to auto scaling in the cloud, but we sort of have our own technology for that. And so if a particular firewall goes down, or if utilization all of a sudden increases due to for some reason, we'll automatically scale them for HA. So these firewalls actually don't work as a cluster. I think Jeff, you might have to correct me here in the checkpoint terms. However, we do kind of manage them as a cluster, and we're also constantly tracking which flows are going through which firewall, so that even if traffic goes through multiple regions, we only send the traffic through one firewall.
Gotcha. Yeah. So as we have discussed, so this is not a checkpoint like active passive cluster like we would see on-prem. This is really a model of auto scaling like you might see in one of the cloud providers, but that auto scaling function is performed natively within Alkyra. So it's not done with AWS ELBs or VMSS in Azure. It's done natively in the Alkyra platform.
Right. So you're essentially offloading the life cycle of the firewalls to us, right? However, they still talk to your on-prem SMS and etc. So
yeah, SMS or MDS. The traditional checkpoint managers are going to manage policy on these firewalls. So there is a question here about tags, and will we be able to use them in the rules? I think let's see the rest of the solution, and then let's maybe expound on that in the Q&A session.
Yep, absolutely. So I think Jeff already sort of summarized our value for the joint solution here. So just a summary slide for the use cases. So here you'll essentially have this is representing a CXP, right? So then we have auto scale for the firewalls. You can connect after you connect your on-premise resources and cloud resources to our CXPs, then you can use our intent-based policy framework, right, to basically do service insertion for the traffic towards the Cloudguards. And then within your Cloudguard SMS or MDS, you would still have your security policies or access control policies and all of the layer 7s or application layer security policies in place. So really the main use cases are traffic inspection for north-south traffic to and from multi-cloud networks, and then east-west traffic, and then also for inspection of east-west traffic within a single CSP, so between VPCs, for example, and then also between CXPs when traffic has to go from cloud to another cloud. There's also another use case which is very popular among our customers, is cloud managed firewalls for regional internet exit. So for example, if you have some of your sites, right, where they may not have a firewall, let's say on site, and you would like to leverage the firewall within Alkyra CXPs for that particular site, you can actually send traffic from that site to the regional CXP, right, for any traffic as exiting to the internet. Then the third use case is consolidated Cloudguard security services for multi-cloud use cases. And I think we already talked a little bit about that, which is, once you've deployed a group of Cloudguard firewalls in a CXP region, you can, if you want to, reuse them for additional clouds, right, as you onboard your onboard to a multi-cloud model. Right. So Jeff, I will let you go ahead and talk about the why Checkpoint plus Alkyra.
Sure, thanks. So realistically, as we already sort of mentioned, we're trying to lower the barriers to entry for multi-cloud security and management. As you're probably well aware, according to the HashiCorp State of the Cloud Strategy Survey, 76% of organizations are already using multi-cloud. And when you're in a multi-cloud environment, there are different limitations about inserting security inspection appliances in traffic flows. Alkyra really removes those barriers by allowing you to send your traffic to Alkyra or integrate with Alkyra and have a centralized policy management featuring Check Point. You'll see in a minute here during the demo, their intent-based policies are really easy to understand. So they're connectivity policies, and they simplify the global and multi-cloud routing that otherwise is often a mess and confusing and hard to troubleshoot and difficult for operational difficult to recover during operational problems. In addition, as we mentioned, this is one set of firewalls that can really provide next generation traffic inspection for all of your cloud traffic, rather than maybe having some firewalls on-prem, having some firewalls in AWS, having some firewalls in Azure. You can put them in one place and simplify your deployment. And then you've got seamless, simple, and cloud agnostic. Actually, I already just said that. So yeah. One other real important point to see, and I think we'll see this in the demo, is that Alkyra provides selective firewall insertion to optimize firewall resources. So within the Alkyra connectivity matrix, you can choose which flows get sent to Check Point for next-gen inspection and which don't. So you have that ability. I know at least in AWS, it's probably possible to do that, but it would be a management nightmare to try to selectively insert and drop, or insert or not insert flows for inspection. And then lastly, Alkyra gives you visibility and simplified operations for your cloud flows. So you're really going to be able to see who's communicating with what. There's a nice visualization platform there. So from Check Point's perspective, on our the integration with Alkyra, my team is really aimed at all the technical integrations with our cloud providers. And these are the top pain points we see from customers all the time. They're looking to minimize complexity, so their routing and redirection architectures. They're looking to minimize cost, meaning the number of security gateways and the cost of those gateways that they have to deploy to provide enterprise-grade security. And Alkyra really provides a great avenue to hit both of those customer pain points. And then secondly, we really want to make sure we're able to cover all of the inspection flows with a consistent security architecture. As we mentioned, with Alkyra and one security policy or one firewall deployment, we are able to cover ground to cloud, ground to internet, or SaaS services like O365 or Zoom. We're also able within any given CSP to handle east, west, and outbound traffic. And then what we're going to see here in the demo is inter-CSP traffic, or if you're, if you need to have traffic between AWS and Azure and you want to inspect that, Alkyra really provides a great mechanism for doing that. Finally, as mentioned, customers want to inspect traffic once and avoid hairpinning. So Alkyra provides a centralized location to consolidate traffic routing and provide security services. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Ken for a demo of the solution, and then we'll cover, there's a couple questions in the Q&A, we'll cover those. And if there are any more that come up from the demo, we'll answer them then.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. I think really covered that really well and really hit the main points of value of this joint solution. So in this demo, we're going to basically show a live environment with all of these essentially connectors, right, on the Alkyra CXX portal. So on the left-hand side, we have the on-prem sites, right, the data center and the branch sites. And then on the right, we have the cloud connectors or your cloud networks, as well as a couple internet exit points. And then the middle, this is really the focus of this joint solution, is where we deploy the Cloudguard firewalls, right, for traffic inspection, threat prevention, et cetera, for really any traffic flow between any of these endpoints that is showing on this in this topology here. And so the different colors that we're showing are basically the segments, and again, sort of a VRF, if you think about it from a traditional networking perspective. And so there's a couple sites here, as well as some of the clouds that are in the corporate segment. And specifically, we're going to focus on the three of these connectors here in red. So there's the AWS VPC here as a subnet of 172.16.100. The Azure VNet has two subnets for with 120 and 121, as well as a data center subnet that is 10.8.101. And you'll notice there's a apps, users, etc. that are basically applied to the connector. And that is the group tags that we've been sort of talking about, right? So if you look at it, the data center one, as well as the AWS VPC here and the Azure VNet are tagged with apps group tag. And we'll show in a second that you can basically say, okay, any traffic between the apps, right? So any apps to app traffic I want to service insert through the firewall, through the Cloudguard firewalls. And then furthermore, if I have traffic from apps to apps, but they match destination traffic going to the second subnet within Azure, the 172.16.121 here, I may want to bypass the firewall. So that will be the use case I will demo in a little bit today, which is first is connectivity from a on-prem site to both of these cloud service provider networks on the right here, AWS and Azure. And then a second use case would be traffic from AWS to Azure. And then last use case is for anything going to the 172.16.121 subnet within, for anything apps to apps, then I want to bypass the firewall. So just to show the selective traffic insertion.
So Ken, one sec here actually, because I'm realizing we definitely want to see the demo, but to clarify a question, because I realize this is a good slide, we had a question about what VRFs are. So VRFs are virtual routing and forwarding instances, or you might hear network geeks call them VRFs. VRFs are sort of virtual routing domains. And on this diagram, there's a purple VRF, purple pink, that is the corporate segment, and there's a blue segment called the PCI segment. So within the Alkyra CXP, those are basically roads or connectors between those different logical entities. So as you can see there, even though on the bottom left we've got users connected to all of the things on the right, only that branch 2, the only thing on this diagram it can talk to from a connectivity perspective, right, is the payments group on the top right, because that's the only member of its VRF. So there are literally no other roads from branch 2 to anywhere except payments. Now, the other VRF, the corp segment, has a bunch more roads and connectivity between each other. And that's really what a VRF provides. It provides a network-based or really a layer 3-based connectivity mechanism. And then on top of that, we can layer additional services like the Alkyra groups and like Check Point security policy. So just because this is VRF, how to describe this. Yeah.
Sorry, Jeff. I was going to say, yeah, VRF is basically segregation of routing domains and data planes. So, if you think about your corporate network, typically you have a corporate network and guest network and maybe another PCI or HIPAA network, and you want them to be completely segregated. You don't even want any type of let's say a map, right, to get there. You just want those things to be completely separated from each other. And so currently, actually, the cloud providers don't provide that capability natively. So that's really another use case for Alkyra as well. All right. Anything else, Jeff, you want to cover before I jump into the demo?
Nope, I'm putting my dogs away. I'll be back in 1 sec.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to first go into the Alkyra portal here. So this is the Alkyra CSX portal, and this topology here really basically just exactly mimics the demo topology that we just showed in the last slide. The only difference here is we do have a VPC where a Check Point SMS security management server is deployed in. And so that is going to be the SMS that the Check Point firewalls, which we have already provisioned within the CXP will talk to. So on the left-hand side, you have the on-prem sites, right? The data center 1, and then the 2 branch sites, branch 1 and branch 2, that are basically tagged with users group. So note that there are actually 2 different CXPs in this case. So one is based on the US West region, and another one in the US East region. So you'll notice that when I generate traffic, let's say from a client that's sitting behind data center 1, going to the Azure VNet over here, right? It's actually going across regions and going through 2 different CXP regions, but we'll see and prove to you later that is only going through one Cloudguard, one group of Cloudguard firewalls. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start by VNC into a data center 1 client. So first thing is I'm going to log into a client that's over here. I'm going to access a VNet in AWS over here, as well as a Azure, as well as servers sitting in the Azure VNet over here. Right. Okay, so I'm here, and the IP address of this client, which is in a corporate segment, is 10.8.101.42. And I am just going to go ahead and ping the Azure VNet server in Azure. So 172.16.120.4, and we're good, right? So another server in Azure is 121.4. And you can see the latency is a little bit longer there because we're essentially going across country, right? And then getting that traffic back. Also,
sure, just to note for those, because I'm looking at the diagram and you guys aren't. So that was from on-prem to 2 different subnets in Azure.
Yep.
And
now,
I think, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Jeff. Yeah, now I'm just going to check from from basically this is simple curl or on the browser, right? So I'm checking connectivity to the AWS server, which is 172.16.100.48, and then both of those Azure web servers, right? That's 172.16.120.4 and 121.4. So now we have the connectivity. I do want to show the policy that we configured.
And to be clear, this is that distinction between Alkyra intent-based policy, which is going to provide the network connectivity, and then checkpoint security policy, which we'll see in a second.
Yep. Yeah. Thank you, Jeff. Yeah. So here is the policy that's matching on that traffic, right? So if I expand this, actually, if I go back here and I press that, you can see it's highlighting, essentially the connectors that applies to that policy. And if I, and this is users group, apologize, this is for apps group there. So there are the 3 connectors that applies to that policy. And if I expand this, and you can see that I'm basically matching on any traffic with the scope of apps to apps. So groups to basically apps group to apps group. And then on the rules, we're within the rule list. So you can create a rule list matching 6 tuple of various different source and destination, protocol, etc. Here we're basically saying for everything going to the 172.16.121 subnet, which is the second Azure subnet, I am just going to allow it. But then for everything else, I want to go ahead and insert that traffic through the checkpoint firewalls. Okay. And so how we actually created this policy is very straightforward. Maybe I should have shown that to start with. But basically, you can create a policy, and then you can select which segment that policy will apply to. You can then select, right, basically the high level constructs. So either connectors or groups which connectors and groups to the traffic will be from and to, and then you can then match on additional 6 tuple attributes, right? So and do that. So if I look at the apps group rule again, right, that's exactly what we did here is we match the scope for anything from the apps group to apps group, and then match on additional attributes and decide on what to do with them. So we want to allow traffic going to the Azure subnet, but then just let them through, permit them. And then for everything else, we want to service insert that traffic through the group of Cloudguard firewalls. All right, so now I'm actually going to go into the SMS. And so you can see I was already looking at this earlier. So if I just match on 10.8.101.42, which is this client that I VNC'd into, sorry about that, looks like, then you can see, based on the timestamp there, it's showing us all of the traffic, right, from that data center 1 to 172.16.120.4, which is the first Azure subnet. It's being forwarded to the firewalls and further inspected. And then there's also the traffic flow to the AWS web server as well, right? 172.16.100.48. And the traffic for 172.16.121, which is traffic destined to that second subnet in Azure, is now still permitted, but is not forwarded to the firewall. So just want to show that use case of selective traffic insertion.
Sure. So to be clear, the reason we're not seeing the third Azure subnet here is because the Alkyra policy provides a road or a connectivity between on-prem and that second subnet. But it also says we've chosen not to provide next-gen traffic inspection for that subnet for whatever reason.
Yep.
Okay.
And so next, the use case I want to show real quick is traffic from between multi-cloud, right? So if I go back here, and so very quickly, I've SSH into a Ubuntu server that's in that AWS VPC, as well as SSH into the server that's in the second Azure subnet there. Just to prove to you that this is indeed a web server in AWS. You can see based on the metadata, it's in this availability zone there. And from here, if I go ahead and ping, let's say 172.16.120.4, which is not this web server, but a server in the first subnet, I can get there just fine. So I'm going from a AWS subnet in that topology to the Azure VNet, right? And I'm going to go ahead and ping the second web server, which is actually this. Oh, if I can spell.
Almost.
It's actually this guy right here, right? So I can reach that just fine. And then we can then go back to the SMS again. And this time I'm going to refresh based on the IP address of the AWS web server, which is 172.16.100.48. And so again, you'll see the timestamp showing that for traffic going to the first Azure subnet, it's service inserted through the firewall. And then for the second subnet, it's bypassing it. So we basically just showed you a traffic inspection for cross-cloud east-west traffic, and then as well as traffic inspection for north-south traffic from a on-prem site to multiple cloud networks. So Jeff, in case I missed anything, do you have anything you want to cover real quick?
So no, that was very cool, and I'm glad we got to see that. I do want to get to some Q&A here. So let me go through the summary very quick, and then let's answer some of these questions because we do have some good questions here. So very quickly, as we discussed, and actually we don't even need the slide. Well, put them up on the screen just for the heck of it, but we're providing, Alkyra and Check Point are providing a centralized architecture for traffic inspection for any of your cloud flows. We're providing a uniform security policy framework for any endpoint and any cloud. And we're reducing complexity with native cloud firewall deployments and or limitations of those native cloud firewall deployments. Oh, there you go. It's like I made these slides or something.
Yeah.
All right, so quickly, let's go easiest first. We had a question about licenses for auto scaling. So licenses for the Cloudguard instances are available just like any other license, and they're managed through your management server, through your traditional SMS or MDS. You can apply bring your own licensing or pay as you go, and you specify that at the time of deployment on the Alkyra CXP setup and firewall setup. So same licensing as you would with any of your normal Check Point firewalls. Okay.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm showing the screen here. When you provision a firewall, you can decide on whether you want to do BYOL or pay as you go.
Right. Okay. So we had a question here about will Cloudguard be able to work with the tags or groups defined in Alkyra? Can we build Cloudguard rules with those tags? So I'm going to say right now we haven't focused on that. I think there's a lot of capabilities. This would all be API driven, and we do have API communication between Alkyra and an SMS or MDS. So I'll let Ken sort of expand here. I think there are possibilities, and this would be something that we should work with account managers on the Alkyra and Check Point side to see what you'd like and what kind of possibilities there are there.
Yeah, I think this is one of the discussions, right, Jeff? I think you and I had actually multiple discussions on this at one point. So, we're so far that is currently not there, meaning that we're not going to proactively go and modify your access control policies on the SMS and etc. But yeah, if that is something that you think would be useful for your deployments, and that's definitely something that you can bring up to your account team, and then we can explore between Alkyra and Check Point.
Sure. And just to be clear, we're not doing any policy control. We've chosen not to. I mean, there are possibilities there, but I think more this question was around, could we make the data that Alkyra has on those groups visible to Check Point? I think that's certainly possible. We just haven't really worked on that.
I mean, it's the same framework that it's it's the Cloudguard connector, right? That's the
exactly. Yep. We just haven't built a purpose-built connector for Alkyra.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, it's definitely possible, and if it is something that's of interest, then approach your account team, and we can. It's something that I'm sure we can look at, and it's I don't know what the Alkyra APIs are, but I assume it's all feasible.
Yeah, same. Like it's all if it's API driven, it's possible, right? So yeah. Okay. Ken, I'll let you take this one. There was an ask for demonstration of Oracle Cloud, and I know this demo focused on AWS and Azure, but do you want to touch on Oracle quickly?
Yeah, actually, that capability is GA in about 2 weeks, end of this month. So we will have a native integration with Oracle VCNs, just like we currently do with Azure, GCP, and AWS.
Cool. All right, I'll ask this. Actually, I'll kind of combine these two questions. So sure. For the Alkyra piece to work, it sounds like you have to have a VPN set up between the different data centers, as it were, and and your CXP. Is that really the case? And also, what's the throughput that's what's the throughput restriction? Because sometimes those go hand in hand.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, absolutely. So for the on-prem connectors to connect to Alkyra, you can either leverage your SD-WAN fabric. So you can provision, let's say, SD-WAN appliance within the Alkyra CXP as well. Or you can, for like a data center, yeah, I would say you would use multiple IPsec tunnels and then do ECMP across them. Each Alkyra tenant, when they're provisioned, can be sized for a certain throughput, all the way up to 10, sorry, I think it's right now GA to 5 gigabits per second. So on the cloud side, that's how you onboard the cloud connectors with the different cloud networks is, for AWS, I'll just give an example. So Jeff is definitely more familiar with that than I am, but we essentially would automatically program your AWS VPCs using a provided IAM role, and then change your route tables to have traffic point at an Alkyra transit gateway, for example. So yeah, for on-prem side, it is going to be IPsec tunnels, right? So all that traffic is going to be encrypted, and then on the cloud side, we use the native cloud constructs and to basically point traffic, from your different VNets or VPCs to Alkyra.
Okay, got it. Yeah, okay, I think that got both of those questions. So and then I guess what's the expected overhead for this additional traffic redirection? I mean, and I know it's going to vary based on where it's going and that kind of thing, but I mean, and I assume it's just additional latency, correct? Is there any other?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. Yeah, so unfortunately, I don't have it open right now, but we actually keep track of a matrix of latency between clouds. So for example, latency between AWS and Azure, etc. So if you decide to bring up a CXP in AWS, and then you have a Azure VNet, right, that's connecting to the Alkyra CXP in AWS. I mean, you can bring up a one in Azure, but just let's say we give that example. Yeah, the latency is, I think from everything we've checked in the same region across the board, is usually less than 10 milliseconds. So that is really, I think, I would say one drawback, if you will, right, of this solution. The other question, I think, was in terms of throughput. Jeff, maybe I will have to leverage your expertise on that.
Yeah, well, so actually, from Alkyra's side, if we're talking about IPsec throughput, we're going to be at that 5 gig range, like you mentioned. The expected overhead for the traffic inspection. So again, Alkyra is providing the highway, the network connectivity model. When we add Checkpoint next gen traffic inspection on top of that, really the overhead it's an IPsec connection from Alkyra to Checkpoint. So it's going to be your standard IPsec overhead there, which, it's something, but we don't have specific numbers on that yet.
Yeah, I think also for next steps in terms of further, integrating the solution, I think Jeff and I had also talked about one point of essentially using, using Geneve, right, as encapsulation, which is going to
would improve it.
That overhead.
Yep, absolutely.
So we have one more question here. We've got time for maybe one or two more questions. Jeff, you want to try and take a stab at this?
Yeah, so this is it's a multi-layer question here. So let's read it out. With the use cases that we envision for large, complex, multi-cloud enterprises, does the application developer have use cases where they use Alkyra? Does the AWS infrastructure as code, aka CloudForm or Terraform builder, have use cases where they use Alkyra? So right now, well, I guess let me ask Ken, are you deploying any of this with infrastructure as code, or is it all deployed through your portal?
Yeah, so most of our customers use our portal, but some of the really big customers we have do leverage Terraform exclusively. So we are a Terraform provider And yes, these checkpoint, the Cloudguard firewalls can be provisioned using Terraform.
Gotcha. Okay. So yeah, I mean, I think that answers the question. If there was something I missed in there, please do follow up with us, or maybe put it in the Q&A here.
Yeah, I mean, I think yeah, our solutions definitely gear right towards the network and security teams. However, we do hear some very interesting use cases from the dev teams as well. I think one recently I heard was, basically when you're using AWS EKS, for example, and you bring up a cluster, essentially of Kubernetes clusters within AWS. And how do you, how do you leverage Alkyra, right, to basically automatically limit access to, let's say, those Kubernetes clusters without having to constantly manage your security groups, right? So that's something that's pretty interesting that was brought up. And we also discussed things like, okay, with a private cluster, you can potentially, private cluster as in they have no, if those containers don't have any access to internet, you can literally have the security group set to allow all on there within that VNet VPC, and then have a default route, right, pointing at Alkyra, and then from there you would then use the Alkyra policy framework, right, to manage all of your connectivity and security inspection needs for that particular cluster, and then bring up checkpoint firewalls and the Cloudguard firewalls for any of the layer 7 inspection.
Sure. All right. Thanks, Ken. So we've got one last one here, and actually it's an interesting point. Are there any roadmap plans for integration of the Alkyra topology into Cloudguard Cspm for governance and compliance visibility? So we haven't actually talked about that, but that's, I think, an excellent idea that we should put on our next topics of integration. And I'll just say we could explore adding first-class objects for Alkyra to provide, like the participant asked here, governance and compliance visibility for the Alkyra CXPs. So yeah, I think definitely if there is customer demand there, that certainly helps. So please do follow up with your account manager and SE on the checkpoint side or the Alkyra side and let them know that you're interested. But I will certainly take that back to our side, our R&D teams and our product manager. And I don't know if you have anything to add there, Ken.
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely something we should explore. I'll take note here. So
yeah.
All right. Well, okay. I think we will wrap it up. This is we hit the top of the hour. So thanks y'all for joining us. Since we'll put this up on Checkmates, it'll probably be tomorrow since this is not in my account. It'll be, but we'll try and get this posted for you guys, and we'll see you next time for another Checkmates live virtual event. Bye for now.
Thanks everybody. Right. Thanks Damien. Thanks again.
Right.
Bye.
Have a good one.
Yeah. Ta-da. I said end.